Welcome, everybody, to the second spoiler cast from Nerds Without Pants, this one being for Batman Arkham Knight. I am Julian, and, I finished this game and just had lots of things that I needed to say and get off my chest, and I needed the freedom to spoil the crap out of it in order to do so, and I couldn't do that on Nerds Without Pants proper. So I recruited a couple huge fans of Batman Arkham Knight. We have from pixelbit.com and the person who reviewed the game for the site, JD.
Hey, what's up?
And special guest and friend of the show, John Gholson, who's also a Bat fan.
Hello.
And also, I'd just like to formally say, because I haven't had a chance to talk to you, thank you so much for the wonderful episode 75 greetings. Actually,
thanks.
We had a listener who did not know where the Stone Cold and Skeletor one came from, so kudos to you. He didn't know that it was you, so...
Oh, nice. Did he think it was actually Stone Cold Steve Austin?
I think so.
Oh, that's great.
It was convincing, I will say. Like, as I was listening, I wasn't really paying attention, and I was confused, but then I was like, oh, that sounds like John, but...
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, the Skeletor one in particular did not... That sounded like, 1984 era Skeletor, so...
Well, I have to say, it was tough for me to tear away because I was actually, minutes before I sat down, I was on the last Riddler mission. Basically the last car thing that he has you do before she turns the key in her neck and is free. And I could get it down to about the last couple seconds before I was at the finish line, and I couldn't do it. And I was just doing it over and over and over, and my car was blowing up, but it was right at the last chunk of it. And I knew I had to put the game down and come down here and actually record and talk about the game. But I was so hoping that I would be able to clear that before I sat down to record. I failed.
Well, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I did the rest of the Catwoman related Riddler stuff, so I can fill you in.
Man, I have tapped out on that game at 75%, and that I'll actually talk about on the main show because it actually hit me in a way that I was not expecting when it comes to my video game skills and aging, which I was not prepared for. But I don't want to get into that on this show. But it is funny, and we'll talk about it later. But this is the first Batman game. Well, I guess Asylum I did most of the stuff, but this is the first one of the open world games where I was like, no, I kind of want to do everything. I kind of want to do all this stuff, which I was surprised at. And there's a really good hook for that, and we'll get to that. I think definitely just to get this out of the way. I mean, this is a spoiler cast. I mean, duh, it's in the title, but because of the nature of the storyline of Arkham Knight, we'll probably have to spoil some stuff from Arkham Asylum and Arkham City and probably a little bit of Arkham Origins. So just keep that in mind. If you were thinking of going back to play some of those games, you might want to wait on this episode until then. John, we'll try to... We'll try
womp,
to...
womp.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, also, we'll definitely be spoiling the main story. I think we'll kind of feel things out as far as, the post-game stuff, because I kind of still... I'm not there yet, and I might not get there, but I kind of want to maybe leave that for people who haven't 100% of the game. We'll see. We'll feel it out. But go ahead, John.
I think that stuff is fluid. I think the post-game stuff is just whatever you haven't finished is what exists.
Well, but specifically, the Nightfall protocol.
Oh, that stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happens there, and I don't know if I'll ever get to see it other than YouTube, but I want to.
Yeah. Well, what I did, I don't know which. Did you do any of the Nightfall stuff? Did you see any of those endings, or did you see both by any chance, John?
No, not yet. I just defeated Scarecrow, and so my main story is kind of done, and I'm just wrapping up little missions here and there. Okay,
because I got the first Nightfall ending myself, and then after getting the first one, I got really impatient and looked up the YouTube one. But I'm still trying to get it for myself as well. But I did see both, so if you do want me to explain it a little bit, I can talk about it, but that's, up to you guys.
Well, I don't want to get too far into it yet, but I was wondering, because it says that I need to apprehend 3 of Gotham's Most Wanted to initiate Nightfall, but then if you look at the progress bar, there's still other things after that. I was like, oh,
yeah, there's 2 levels. There's 2 levels of it. There's a bad Nightfall Protocol ending and a good Nightfall Protocol ending, which is pretty much the 100% ending and the non 100% ending.
Oh, okay. I was actually thinking that there might be like additional rogues that show up.
Oh well, there will be with the season pass stuff, but they haven't said anything about that, so I'll just leave that out.
There's a late game one that shows up towards the very end of the game, and I guess this is spoilery. So do you want to know? Yeah. Have you come across Deathstroke?
Yeah, because I mean that's from the main story. Because I have beaten the game. I have beaten the game, to clarify. So like, you know, once you finish off the Arkham Knight, Deathstroke comes in to like basically finish off the contract for the mercenaries and everything.
Oh yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah. But that is still towards kind of the end of the game, and so I get to see his face a lot on the loading screen after I die, because there's like one militia thing where it's like, you know, they have their little walled-in bunkers, and there's one of those like drone turrets all the way around the perimeter, and all the guys are in the middle, and I'm like, hell if I know how to do that. I've tried to get the Batmobile in there, but that's an impossibility. So I don't know what you're supposed to do in that.
I think you need tech for that one, and I don't have the upgrades for it.
Oh, the one that the hacker that does two at a time.
That, or I think there's one that actually you can sabotage one to where it'll fire on another one, so you can actually take out. You should be able to take them out before you actually start, I think. But
yeah, that's what I did. Yeah.
So and that's a point. I've actually come to a fail state where I don't have enough experience points to get the rest of the items, but I don't have the skill to finish stuff to get the experience points to get the rest of the items. So that's where the whole age and ability thing is coming in, where it's like I feel like I can physically not do this stuff, and a lot of it has to do with the Batmobile, which we'll get to. But I guess just to start off, you know, coming at it, you know, I guess let's just get a baseline for everybody. So just for example, I think that Arkham Asylum is one of the best games of the last generation. Just full stop, straight out. Might be in my top 5. I'd have to go back and play it again, but definitely up there. Arkham City, I think, is a classic example of sequelitis, with the whole bigger, badder, more badass thing done to the detriment of the game, in the sense that they had to put so much stuff in there, and the pacing for me is all off, and there's just things that are like, well, okay, like it's still great, but it really felt to me like, and I've said this many times on the main show, but like it's like 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound sack, to the point that I got sick of it. I didn't want to finish like the stuff after I beat the game. And then Origins, I just feel is cash grab city. You know, I really didn't like anything in that game.
Do you remember what? So if we can take a little detour for a history lesson, do you remember the news like from 2012 or 13 or so, where they said that the next Batman game was going to be like a Silver Age Batman game that was going to pay homage to that stuff and be like Art Deco and show those roots, and that never came to fruition, did it?
The only thing that came out of that, because they also said they was going to like talk about the introduction of Batman and the Joker, like their storyline. That's the only part of that came to fruition, because that's what ends up being the crux of the origin storyline, which I'll get to with Arkham Knight, because as much as I love Arkham Knight, and let me say that off the bat, because I'm going to come off as a hater like I always do, and I don't even intend to, but I loved Arkham Knight. It grabbed me in a way that I was not prepared for. I bought it on a whim because I was not excited for it at all, and I had heard enough good stuff about it, and yeah, it grabbed me in a way and didn't let go, and you know, one of my favorite games of the year for sure. But JD, you are like probably the biggest Arkham fan that I know of. Like, you unabashedly love all of them, including Origins, which
I was one of the Origins defenders, because like I still to this day like Origins is not a bad game. It's definitely not as good as the rest of them, and but I still felt like it told a much better story than City, which at the time was my favorite in the series. Of course, having played all of them now and thinking back on the franchise, like, I definitely agree with you about how Arkham Asylum is probably the most important of those. And I think that Arkham Asylum is definitely the tightest in terms of its design. And just thinking back on how, and playing Arkham Knight, and you kind of see some of the elements and some of the way that the levels are designed, and you think back to how it was in Asylum, you're like, wow, like in Asylum it really did feel like that Metroid style, whereas this, you could definitely see how they tried to have the hybrid. And they did the same thing in City. I do feel like Knight was a little bit tighter with that, though. Like, I feel like Knight did what they wanted to do in City a lot better, and they were kind of benefited from it. But yeah, like I'm generally in consensus with you. Like I think all of them are just good games. I enjoy the combat way too much. I think that they get the feel down like almost perfectly for what they're trying to do. And I mean, to be fair, like it's good enough to establish its own Batman canon, if you will. Like, there's movies spawned off of it and comics and all that, and I think it deserves its praise.
Yeah, it's interesting because when the first game came out, I was like, this is awesome because it's a comic book continuity Batman game that isn't beholden to a movie or anything. Like, they had the time to do all this stuff, but then by City, I was like, oh, wait, this is its own thing. Like, this is not actually the comic book. And then for sure, like, if I wasn't positive by the end of City, the end of Arkham Knight cements it that, oh no, this is Rocksteady's Batman. This is not comic book Batman, even though it borrows heavily from the comics. But John, I thought that you had actually played them all, but you mentioned in text recently that you haven't played Origins, but also I just got the impression that you haven't really played City?
We have Origins here at the house, and I had kind of hoped to get my hands on it right before we recorded. We have it on Wii U of all things.
I hear that's one of the better running versions of the game, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that game was riddled with technical issues when it first came out, and a lot of people who got the Wii U version were like, "This one actually runs pretty all right." So,
well, we have that one, and I played Arkham Asylum. I don't know. I didn't own it. I feel like maybe I borrowed it from you, or maybe you loaned it to me. I don't know, but maybe our friend Brandon Benner did. But I played the first one. Liked it okay. I liked the going back to being like a younger gamer. I don't know if you remember all the press leading up to the release of PlayStation's Batman and Robin.
Oh, I do.
About how it was going to be. You were going to be able to, you're going to drive the Batmobile and you're going to see random crimes going on, and you get out of your car and fight those guys and then get back in the car and go on a mission. And it's funny that it's taken like almost 20 years before we've gotten to a game that's actually fulfilled the promise that was made during the development of the Batman and Robin movie tie-in game.
I would contend that we still have not had that game because the concept for that Batman and Robin game for PlayStation is still like the perfect Batman game for me because it was going to encompass like the detective part of him in a really heavy way, which I still feel that these games, although Knight gets the closest, still doesn't really get the detective part of Batman the way that I really want it to be.
The thing with City is I really wanted to like it. I was really primed for it. Me having a 3D TV, that game being in 3D was like a big selling point, so I got the game. It looked really, really nice in 3D. But it just didn't hook me. There's some games that you play and they just don't get their hooks into you, and there's others where it's like you want to go back to it, and that was one where it was just like, and it's funny because starting Night, I assumed that my gameplay experience was going to be much closer to my experience with Arkham City, where I'd try a couple missions and then put it down because that'd been what I'd done with Asylum and had been what I'd done with City. But again, talking about the pacing, there was something about the way that the stuff was set up where it established pretty quickly that I couldn't do the other things until the game said I was ready to do those other things, which I thought was kind of interesting because my memory was that City was just sort of like there. And I remember a lot of stuff like kind of demanding your attention at the same time with the same narrative weight, not to sound too much like a film critic, but it's hard to tell when you're thrown into a game and you have 4 available missions and none of them seem crystal clear as to which one furthers the main story along, and they all kind of feel the same. So I had this telephone thing going on and like this Mr. Freeze thing going on and like this penguin thing going on, and I couldn't weigh my options as to which one was, the thing that I needed to do. And at the time as well, I've played much more like, I don't want to say mission based, that puts the wrong terminology on it, but like this new style of game where you have a list of quests and you go do that quest, and when you're done with that quest you go do that quest, like Dragon Age Inquisition or like Skyrim or Fallout or things like that, which I've played a lot of those in between. So I was much more used to the almost checklist style of gameplay where it's like, okay, I'm done messing with the Scarecrow stuff for now. I'm going to move my little cursor down here where it says Intel, and I'm going to go do that stuff for now. And then when that stuff's wrapped, I know it's going to be an hour or two before that's going to be active again. So then I go choose something else on that little dial. And yeah, it got its hooks in me pretty deep and pretty early. And I don't want to dominate right now, but while it's in my head and I'm thinking about it, the other turnoff to me in the other games, especially with City, was this like kind of hot topic style approach to Batman and his universe, which didn't feel quite. There was something about it that I found kind of like off. It was almost like to me like a junior high kid's perfect vision of what Batman would be. Was sort of like what the characters were in Arkham City. Like they're all sort of grotesque. Even the heroes are sort of like weird and grotesque to me. It had a really weird feel that with Knight, it felt that way immediately because I was like, oh, I'm not. I actually remember I talked at work with friends that were playing it, and I was like, I'm not really into Rocksteady's vision of Gotham City and Batman. I find it kind of dark and in a way that's sort of like almost juvenile. But as I began to play it, it did a really funny thing over the time that I started playing it, which is it really woke up this long dormant Batman fan within me. I mean, I've been a Batman fan since I was a little kid. Like I used to watch the Filmation cartoon in the 70s on Saturday mornings. Like, I mean, back when I was like 4, and it really made me think about Batman throughout my life and like how the 1989 Batman like turned me into a movie fan. And as I started thinking about it more and more, I started to see in Arkham Knight every like permeation of Batman that's ever existed was paid homage to somehow within this game. I even saw touches of there's touches of Joel Schumacher Batman movies in there with the way that the neon buildings are and the production. Some of it looks like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, Batman the animated series, Batman from the comics, like even the 60s Batman. My Batmobile of choice is the one with the red trim on it to play in the game because it just looks cooler. And so suddenly, like maybe a couple hours into the game, I really started to feel and see it as if it was this big, huge love letter to everything Batman. And yeah, there's like certain things where it's like, okay, that's kind of Rocksteady's version of the Penguin, which is not necessarily like my version of the Penguin, but still, I for some reason this game really opened up my eyes to whatever it was they were trying to accomplish that wasn't maybe evident to me in Arkham City or Arkham Asylum. And again, I don't mean to talk too much about it, but I just want to get that out there before I forget.
Well, no, that's fair.
No, it's funny because I just like to get this out of the way real quick, is that I actively hate Rocksteady's design for Batman and Robin. Like I have since the beginning.
Tim Drake looks like he's like 30.
Yeah. Batman, I agree with. Batman, I disagree. Robin, I agree because I'm not a fan of buzz cut Robin. I changed them to New 52 Robin right away.
And that's what I was getting at. Well, it's my problem with Batman, and it's actually my problem with the movies as well, is that it looks like this really cumbersome suit that he would need like 3 people to help him get into. Specifically the gauntlets, which make him look like Iron Man. I like the trimmed down, not armored version of Batman, like from the comics. But once they gave that free New 52, costumes pack. And to be fair, like the New 52 Batman is sort of a pseudo armor, but it's a thinner armor. I was like, oh no, this is Batman and Robin. So like even though like it's Rocksteady Robin in cutscenes, it's like when you see Robin, it's like, ah, good, you have hair, you know, you have a proper cape. This is Tim Drake. This is, you know, you look like a Robin. You do not look like a, you know, Space Marine. You know, with a mask.
He looked a lot cooler in Arkham City though, because he had the cape at least. And I was like, the hood, I can deal with him being hooded and stuff, but without it, it's just he looks way too old. And I know he's not that old, you know, but
yeah,
it's kind of unsettling. It's weird.
Yeah, but I think a perfect way to kick this off is actually that point of pacing, because that's really what made me love Arkham Knight so much. And John, you perfectly said everything that all my problems with City was that it felt more like a Superman type game where everybody's like, hey Batman, hey please over here, and it's like that's not really like the Batman that I know. Like Batman will definitely go out of his way to help people, but people don't really flag Batman down. You know, people, including like good people, run from Batman because he's this myth. You know, he's so terrifying in the stories and everything. And so it was really weird in that game to be like on a mission and then have other people like kind of trying to tug me off of that mission to do things. Where here, like, there's actual story points where Alfred is like, well, Master Bruce, you know, we don't have a lead on the Arkham Knight right now, but there's this and this that needs your attention, and then you kind of assess which seems to be the more important thing. And straight up, I role-played in this game. I felt like the mother effing Batman because, like for me, like Riddler, I ignored the entire game and I felt that it fit because it's like, come on, Riddler, you've done the exact same thing 4 times now, and it hasn't worked, and you think that you're going to get anywhere with this. You're so low on my list that I'm not even going to pay you any attention. Catwoman's fine. You're not going to kill her because you want me to do your game. So you can just go out there and taunt me all you want. I've got more pressing matters to attend to. And so I literally did not even try the first Riddler thing until after I beat the game. Such was my ire towards that character. But yeah, and there was straight up a moment where you're told that Lucius Fox is like incommunicado, and I was like, well, that's got to be done right now because that's Lucius Fox. So I, you know, hop in the Batmobile and I jet over there as fast as I can. And even though the game doesn't make you do that, like it was a sense of urgency instilled in me just from the way the game is set out and the way it's paced, and that was so sorely missing from the last 2 games. Last 2 games meaning Origins and City.
Yeah, because I definitely agree because I enjoyed City a lot, and I remember, you know, a lot of me getting through that game the way I did could have been attributed to like it's new and it's hot and you're excited and you want to see what happens. But yeah, I definitely remember being kind of underwhelmed with how the side missions didn't really add much to the main plot. The main plot felt like its own thing. But in this game, it's like not only were the side missions woven, into the story better, so you could feel like you can have like, you know, take a break from doing the story and doing something else, but they actually felt like they added to the narrative and added to the story they're trying to tell, because part of what makes Arkham Knight so interesting to me in particular was just how it breaks down Batman's psyche and also the elements of the Bat family story that they kind of approach. And it was, you know, I don't know, it really hooked me in a way that I didn't expect to be hooked by this game. And I expected to like it, but I didn't expect to be so drawn to it, just like you guys were saying.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, the story, and I guess, you know, well, I think it's weird to do like a synopsis of it because if you're listening to this, you know the story, but I'm kind of torn because I feel, I need to say this like real quick because I feel it's important, but I'm beginning to feel that the Joker is becoming a crutch that writers use in order to tell a really cool Batman story, where it's like, oh, we need the Joker for this.
I feel like a crutch. Joker's a crutch for DC in general, almost.
Sure. Yeah.
because, like, you know, you talk to any average, you know, someone who might have seen a few comic book movies or a few Batman movies or the Nolan trilogy, and if it's not Joker, they don't really care. And that's why I feel like a lot of emphasis has been put on Suicide Squad's Joker. And, if you look at the trailer reaction to that, everybody cheered when the Joker came on. And I honestly felt like he was one of the weaker portrayals in that, if you're talking, in relating it to comic books. And, I think that people are setting a weird expectation for that movie in general, just because, like, I don't think that Joker is going to be that important to that movie. I think he's going to be maybe in the Harley Quinn flashbacks, but I don't think he's going to be like the apex villain. Yet he's what sells. He's what people like. Just the idea of him, and it carries over into the series. Even though I feel like this game handled it the best way they could, but yeah, in a way you can kind of see like, yeah, they needed the Joker in order for it to, be a talking point, especially.
Yeah, well, and I guess the thing is that, like, for me anyway, as much as I love, and don't get me wrong, like, the Joker is one of the most complex, interesting villains. He's definitely Batman's greatest villain. I'd put him in top tier with, like, really any comic book, family. As much as I love Mark Hamill's Joker, because to me he is the Joker. Like, when they were talking about casting for The Dark Knight, I was like, just get Mark Hamill and put him in makeup and let him play the Joker. Like, just have him take it down about 2 notches, and it'd be perfect for big screen if he's directed well. But, him having been in 3 previous Batman games as the focal point made me feel like, damn it, guys, you killed him in the second one, and that was really ballsy, and I really appreciate that. You didn't need to put him in this game, but at the same time, like, the way they did it was so well done that I can't really fault them for it. And I guess maybe if Origins didn't exist, I would feel better about it. But that's kind of my thing. But I just want to talk real quick about, like, how well he was integrated into this game, because just from a technical standpoint, I don't even know how this happens, because there's parts where he just pops up and it can't be scripted. Like, I don't think that he's only appearing at the top of this one building to scare you. Like, it has to be at a certain point of the game, and it's just a building at random. But at the same time, it's like there's got to be some crazy, like, technical stuff on the back end to do this, like where he just shows up, when you, like, literally turn around and then he's there and then he's gone. And I just thought it was so well done that, and like you said, JD, like, it was a perfect, like, way to, like, kind of analyze Batman's psyche in a really interesting way. But I guess I feel like I would have probably liked it even better if it had been, like, 2 hours of the game instead of the majority of the game. But I mean, I'd like to hear what you guys, like, feel about that. Like, John, like, you've been a little bit quiet about the beginning part of the game, but, like, how did you feel about that? I mean, you hadn't finished City, but it's obvious what had been going on at the beginning of Night.
I feel like the Joker stuff, I don't know that I thought that it's difficult to talk about, because the ending directly has to do with Scarecrow, but by setting Scarecrow up as, like, the main villain of the game, that resolution felt like a letdown. The Joker stuff to me felt like a more significant payoff in relation to the identity of the Arkham Knight.
Right. And
I really liked the kind of, like, artsy journey into the Joker's mind. I liked that just from a was it fun to play? It's like, I don't even know that I think it was fun to play. It was more artful and interesting and unexpected. But then I also, weirdly enough, when you come out of it, it's not really like a boss fight, so to speak, in the way that it feels like you went through some big challenge, because you just kind of, like, walk through the thing, and then you have, like, your fight, and then Scarecrow's defeated. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, I get it from, like, a storytelling standpoint, and it pays it off from a storytelling standpoint, but we're still talking about a game. And I don't know that I felt that it paid it off from a gameplay standpoint, because Scarecrow was the big bad, like, the entire time. And maybe you could say Joker was the big bad, but either way, that's kind of like the final fight. And it's its story. Do you know what I mean? That's cool,
Yeah,
but that's
rather
cool,
than
but it's a game. I don't know.
I get what you're saying, but I actually loved that about it. And I guess because, and I had actually said this on our last episode of Nerds Without Pants, but that, I felt that, like, you don't need a boss fight with the Joker. Like, an ending with the Joker should just be a punch to the face, because that's kind of Batman and the Joker. Like, he's intelligent, but he's not really physical. Same thing with Scarecrow. But also, like, and JD, like, real quick, have you finished Dead Space 2 for your backlog?
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Okay. And I don't want to spoil Dead Space 2, but
it was
Dead
very
Space
much
2,
like that, actually.
The last boss is like, it's kind of very artistic in that sense, where it's more of a psychological battle than it is a physical one. And I really appreciate that, because it's something that's stuck with me, like, for years since I finishing that game. And I think that Arkham Knight is going to be the same way. And maybe if there hadn't been better payoffs before that, I would have felt differently about it. Like, I really enjoyed dealing with the Arkham Knight at the very end, because it was the way that I wanted the last Joker battle to be in Arkham Asylum, which was, we're going to give you some of the toughest Predator rooms that we've had to, so far in the game, and we're going to crank this up to 11, and you need to solve this in order to get to the bad guy. And it's not an actual fist fight, it's more just like outthinking your opponent. Even though I feel that the game, like, really starts to slog towards the end, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, JD, like what did you feel about that Joker stuff? Like, did it work for you?
Yeah, that ending was amazing. Like, I was like, just like hands gripped on the controller, just like, because just like you were saying, I felt like narratively it was the payoff that I was personally looking for. Like, a lot of people actually complained about the lack of boss fights in this game, and it didn't really bother me until I started doing the post-game thing. Like, there's one place where I felt like there was a true missed opportunity for an actual boss fight, and that is with Deathstroke, actually. Like, instead of fighting him hand-to-hand, you fight him in a tank. And then after you do the tank part, like when you finally are one-on-one with Deathstroke, he jumps out of his tank, and then Batman jumps out, punches him, it's over. Sorry for the extra effect. And it's like, and it's kind of like what you were saying, how, well, for most of the villains, he would just punch him, but Deathstroke is not that villain. Deathstroke is that villain. You have you have that fight where Batman gets, his eyes bloodied, and, he's just walking, limping away from it, but he wins. But that's the fight where I felt like they should have gone all out and let you have your epic fight. And
the Deathstroke fight in Arkham Origins was one of the only things in that game that I legitimately loved, because it was because it was like a counter battle, and it took, like, the combat and, like, turned it just slightly on its head to make it something different, and it felt really cinematic, but at the same time I was in control of everything the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, other than that, though, I felt like, I didn't really need the boss fights, because that's, the boss fights are cool, like, when they're done in a interesting way. But I felt like the meat and the bread and butter of what I play the Batman games for isn't necessarily the boss fights. They're kind of more the icing to me. So it didn't really hurt my experience. But like yeah, as you were saying, like, the Joker stuff at the end, I thought was really extremely, really well done, and it was a cool payoff. But to get to what you were saying about how it kind of diminished the Scarecrow's role, I do also agree with that, because he was pretty much a vehicle for that. But I felt like they wove it together in a way that made a lot of sense. And it was like he needed to kind of use the Scarecrow's fear toxin in order to actually show Joker his true fear, which is being forgotten. And Batman was able to use that to free himself of the Joker toxin or whatever. And it was kind of genius, and I didn't really think about that at all as even an option to that being the resolution. But at the end of the day, it just kind of makes Scarecrow feel like he's just kind of like a pawn in this, everlasting game between the Batman and Joker. And, it kind of made me question, like, was the Arkham series really just a exploration of Batman versus the Joker? And that's kind of what it seems like, because as cool, like, every other villain really felt like a tool or an accessory to the Batman versus Joker feud. And, I understand that, that's cool. That's like the seminal thing. And of course, if you have Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, you're going to want to do that because you want to take advantage of both of these guys. But at the same time, it does feel like, you could have seen, a little bit more of what some of these people can do. I feel like it was a little bit harsher in City, though, than it was in this game, because at least in this game, you get to see the extent of what Scarecrow can do with the cloudburst, and just the beginning, that whole opening sequence. They really kind of toy with you a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I do have some criticisms about the storytelling, and I do like just as a fan of Batman and Batman lore, I would have preferred that they tried to bump up one of his lesser, not even lesser known, I guess lesser known to the masses type villains. I think Two-Face would have been an awesome, Two-Face has not really had little to do in these games, and I think he's such a big part of Batman's history. And honestly, going back to the boss fight thing, the one disappointment for me so far has been the final Two-Face bank job, where I thought it was going to be a big thing, and I actually took him out with an inverted takedown, and I was like, oh wait, really?
They did the same thing to him in the City DLC, the Harley Quinn's Revenge, I believe.
Yeah.
There was something very similar to that involving Two-Face. I don't know if Two-Face was in it, but where the main boss, you kind of just take him out as if he was a regular guy, and it was kind of weird.
Yeah, and then also and I've said this before, but I would have loved for them to delve into Court of Owls stuff, because I think that's a really cool thing that's been added to the Batman universe in the last few years. But also, I'm just really disappointed that they have done now 4 times in a row a 24-hour Batman story. Because I think that there's a lot of potential for interesting storytelling to have Batman work out a really tough case that goes over months, and during those months, he's dealing with these smaller cases that weave in and out of things. Again, I think Origins would have been a better game if the crux of the story had been him dealing with the Red Hood, and then you see the Joker at the very end for a cutscene, and it's not a thing. The Red Hood is just a thing that he deals with throughout the course of the thing, but
And you're talking old Red Hood for the listeners.
Old Red Hood, yeah. And actually, so were you guys as disappointed as I was that you called it within minute 1 of the game that it was Red Hood?
I kind of was, because at the beginning when I heard him speak, and I figured this out the same way IGN's Greg Miller did, because I am very good at picking up voices. So as soon as he spoke, I was like, that sounds like Troy Baker. And I know that in City, Troy Baker played Nightwing or Robin, or he played somebody, but he played one of Batman's, lower. I think he played Tim Drake Robin, actually, in that game. He doesn't play him in this game, but he did in that game. But I was like, okay, so they have Troy Baker, and he's, Two-Face, but he's also the Arkham Knight. And the way he was talking to Batman made it seem like maybe this is Jason Todd, because I can kind of hear it. And then you have the flashback, and you hear, you have this flashback sequence where the Joker shows you Tim Drake being tortured, and you hear Tim Drake talk, and it was Troy Baker. And I was like, oh man, so this is getting even more, plausible that it is him. But I didn't want to believe it was him, because they did all this hype. Oh, the Arkham Knight is a brand new character to this franchise. And I was like, I really think I had 3 wild card guesses, and one of them wasn't a wild card, obviously, but one of them was Jason Todd. The other one was Damian Wayne, because I thought maybe they were going to go out there. And then my third wild card was Terry McGinnis, and I thought that they were going to do some crazy future shit, And obviously they didn't go in that direction. It was the safe one. And I was upset at first, but after thinking about the themes in the game, I became more than okay with it. It's just they shouldn't have lied to us that way and said it was a brand new character. Don't say that. Just I guess they have to do that to preserve their mystique, but it just felt a little like a cheap shot.
Yeah, and I wasn't upset so much as I was just kind of disappointed, because I was like, oh, you just told Under the Red Hood again. but in a different way. But John, like, did you call it right away, or I was kind of expecting a swerve up until they started to do like the actual Jason Todd Joker stuff, and I was like, oh no, this is that.
Yeah, I think it was maybe the second time I came across him that I was like, oh, is this going to be Jason Todd? And it was. I mean, yeah, I don't know how much of a mystery. I think the only thing that made me second guess it maybe a little bit more was having not played the other games to completion. I didn't know if they had ever mentioned Jason Todd or introduced Jason Todd at all. There were actually a couple sequel moments like that where I felt like I was a little lost, like the Hush stuff in this one. I was just like,
Hush
okay.
Hush was part of a side quest in Arkham City that I'm pretty sure not every player has seen, but there's definitely a side quest where there's a lot of people are like, hey, I saw a guy that looks just like Bruce Wayne, and what is he doing here? And then you go find him, and he's behind this glass case, and he kind of goes away, and he says he'll be back. So they kind of alluded to him a little bit, and a couple other people too, but.
Yeah, the Jason Todd thing is just like that. That's such a like a new DC thing. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that they tried to dress it up and give it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a fan of. I'm not. I know I'm not. I'm not a fan of the Jason Todd Robin. So I'm just like. Once it seemed inevitable, like that part of the story didn't really have any suspense to it, and it actually gets kind of weird because it's just like, oh, I'm not Arkham Knight anymore, but let me wear this costume instead. And then it's been a couple hours, and now I put a bat symbol on my chest. It's like, okay.
If anything, the lamest part about that was that there was not like an actual payout. Maybe there is later on, but as far as the main storyline, like. He shows up again, saves Batman, but then there's no moment of like catharsis between the two of them.
No, all there is that that pre-order DLC from GameStop, and you it's literally 15 minutes. But first of all, just let me say this off the bat: the pre-order DLCs that you get, the pre-order story DLC, are terrible. Both of them. They're both 15 minutes long, and they barely add any context to the story at all. The first one you play as Harley Quinn. You go through this little place, you take out one area like stealth, and then you fight some enemies, and then Nightwing comes, you beat him up, and then that's it. And it's like there's barely an ending to it. And the second one, it's pretty much the Red Hood versus Black Mask, and Black Mask is, you have to take out a couple of stealth rooms, and then you go fight a room, and you fight Black Mask, and then you beat him, and that's it.
Yeah.
But they don't even mention the ending of the game. They don't mention anything after. It's just like, oh, so some period after Arkham Knight, he does don the Red Hood thing, but there's like no transition to it. It's just. That's it.
Which is odd because they do such a great job of actually having audio that addresses the big reveal, which is that Batman's identity is compromised at the end of this game, and all of that stuff. Honestly, I recommend finish the game as quickly as you can and then go do the side stuff, because it makes the side stuff so much more interesting. Like when I captured Two-Face. The conversation that he has in the Batmobile on the way back is like, oh, that is some good stuff. But John, you had a point also that I think you were trying to make, or.
Oh no! Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of establishing of just how far off the range Jason Todd has gone, and how he's essentially been like brainwashed and like reprogrammed by the Joker. And as much as the game really drives that home, they sure do themselves a disservice by having him just go, Jason, it's me, Bruce, and him go, oh, okay, I'm good now. And it's like, I don't know that that's how deprogramming works, but it's also a game with a Batman, so I guess you have to take the good with the bad. But I just feel like they really went out of their way to show his process and his transformation and what could make him turn into this person, that it really felt like such a hiccup for him to change on a dime. I almost wish in a way the game just would have made him disappear in a way that wasn't so definitive in regards to I'm a good guy now, something a little more ambiguous, where you feel like his story isn't over, and it lingers through the rest of the missions, where you're kind of like, geez, I wonder what happened to Jason,
especially because in the comics, like the Jason as the Red Hood does not get along with the rest of the Bat family most of the time, because he still has that chip on his shoulder. I will say real quick, one, I was surprised to find out that this game was rated M before I bought it. But also, I feel they didn't capitalize on that in any way, shape, or form, because, and I've talked about this before, and I mentioned it on our comic book episode of Nerds Without Pants, but the first superhero comic that I ever read was The Death of Jason Todd. I read Death in the Family. And I was 9 years old watching the Joker bludgeon Jason Todd with a crowbar. And I was expecting that to be done, and I'm not a bloodthirsty dude, but I was expecting that to be done in such a way that I was going to be cringing. And it's they do it off camera and there's no sound to it. You just see him grab the crowbar and then go into the shadows, and it's all right, well, you're not really illustrating just how bad Joker was to this dude. And also to your point, John, about incorporating lots of different versions of Batman, the whole deprogramming of Jason Todd, I think, was a little homage to the Batman Beyond movie, Return of the Joker, where it was Tim Drake, but kind of a similar thing where Joker captures a Robin and then turns him basically. But I and also just going back to what you mentioned about Batman, John, is that I don't really like the way. I don't know if it's a matter of his script or if it's a matter of the way that Kevin Conroy was directed. But Batman is very cold in this game. And I know that Batman is gruff and, he's the lone wolf and everything, but there always comes a point, especially in his really tough times, when he has that moment where he realizes that he can't go it alone, and he has that, I need your help thing with the rest of the Bat family, or, that he's very concerned or very tender with the people that he's brought into this life. And definitely his reaction to Jason being alive is very tepid and really kind of deflated, big part of that story for me.
I just felt well, are you talking more in terms of him finding out that Jason was alive, or just his coldness towards everybody else?
Just in general, I get the whole oh, you need to go and do your thing, especially because for video game purposes, you can't have Robin or Nightwing tagging with you the entire game. But he's so leave me alone the whole time, and there doesn't, other than and Superstep had mentioned this in the comments on our last episode, that it's him being affected by the Joker blood, but I don't feel that's really I don't think it's really addressed as well as it could have been, because that didn't really occur to me until after the fact. I was oh, okay, yeah, I guess he has been acting weird.
I didn't necessarily think it was completely from the Joker blood, but I just think it was just part of the fear, one of the main themes of this game was that whole fear toxin and how it affects people. And I feel genuinely, he was scared because Barbara gets captured, and he knows that he lost Tim in the past. Jason Todd in the past, and he doesn't want to risk anything happening to Tim or to, Dick Grayson, Nightwing, because he knows that he has this. He's been infected with this thing. He knows it's not safe. And then once these people want to get involved, he starts to get even touchier once Barbara does get captured. And he's like, okay, no, just stay out of it, Robin. You don't need to be here. Nope, this is all me. And I feel like the scene where Batman thinks that Barbara killed herself was a good symbol of a good proof of that point, because he almost breaks down. He almost loses it. Him and Alfred are he's on his knees, and he sounds like, you finally hear him about to lose it. He starts to break his character a little bit, and Alfred is there, and he kind of has to talk him into it. And of course he does come around and starts to think of a solution. But I just feel like he was just scared. He didn't want anything to happen to these people because he feels like he's brought all these people into this crazy escapade, and he's starting to believe some of the things that people say about his mission, and he's doubtful for the first time. Like it was just to me it seemed like he was just kind of at a personal low at that point, and he didn't want people like Nightwing to get involved. And I do feel like that was kind of like a missed opportunity, because going back to what you were saying about letting Jason Todd kind of go off into this, just go off and a little ambiguously and not come back, is because like I felt like they could have used Nightwing to save him at the end instead. Like I understand how it was important to have for the series to wrap up Red Hood's story, since they're not going to make another Arkham game. But I mean, Nightwing was there, and sure, you have this and I feel like he was a kind of a missed opportunity in general, because Nightwing was part of the Penguin side missions, right? And I felt like the dynamic between him and Batman was so interesting, because even though it's just for a few missions, you get to see the difference in character, like, because Dick Grayson is a lot more of a playful, kind of upbeat version of upbeat character in the Bat family.
Yeah.
And every time you do a mission with him, he kind of has all these quips, and you talk to him, and he talks about how the good old days, and he talks about how he can help and how he's been through all this, and he does have the experience, and we know this. He's Nightwing at this point. But to kind of just leave it at that, and he doesn't really get involved in any of the epilogue. Yes, Tim is there because he's captured, but you don't really get to see how Nightwing helps to pay off this whole arc for Batman. When you get to see how Barbara's arc goes, and you get to see how Tim's arc goes, but you don't really get to see how Nightwing's finishes off.
I've always felt like the difference between Dick Grayson and Bruce, and I think it's part of the reason why Dick and Barbara Gordon get along so well, is I've always felt like those characters can see the light at the end of the tunnel in a way that Bruce can't. I think Bruce is relentless and feels like this will be his mission until the day that he's dead or can't do it anymore. And I feel like there's something within both Dick Grayson and Barbara where they feel like someday we won't have to do this. And I think that optimism and that light at the end of the tunnel is what gives them a completely different perspective than Bruce. In regards to like the family stuff, I feel like I think the game tries to address that by having him rescue people constantly. He's always like, everyone's kidnapped one after the other after the other. It's sort of like
that was a sticking point for me. It's like, come on, guys! Like every one of you tonight got captured. Everyone.
Yeah. So like this person, and then this person, and this person. So I think they try to address it that way. I have to tell you though, I think where it fails, and it speaks to Julian's point, is that I have no sense of who Bruce Wayne is in the universe of these games.
Right.
And I find him, when they do touch upon Bruce Wayne, it's super boring. And I don't feel like Bruce Wayne should necessarily be super boring, because I don't find like, if we're talking other DC characters, I don't find Clark Kent necessarily super boring. But Bruce Wayne in the wrong hands can be like the dullest character in the world. And in these games, I think any time that there's stuff that touches on Bruce Wayne, it's sort of like lets all the air out of the balloon. They don't work very hard. Rocksteady in general, and I don't know if it goes across the other games, but in this game, they don't work very hard to give you a sense of what Batman does when he's not being Batman, and who Bruce Wayne is as a person, separate from the Batman persona. Mm-hmm. And it's so perfunctory in this game, and I really think that's where you miss a lot of the heart of... because you don't get to see his humanity outside of his suit, because even the scenes where he's not, the scenes where he's showing his face, he's not showing his humanity as Bruce Wayne. He's just Batman without a mask on.
Right.
Yeah.
He's even doing the Batman grimace still. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even in Arkham City, like the way that game opens up is, you're playing as Bruce Wayne. And I think there's a DLC for Arkham Origins where you're playing as Bruce Wayne for an extended period of time. But I didn't play that just because after Origins, after I finished it, I was kind of okay with it. I didn't need to play anymore. But Yeah, even those sequences, like they kind of still emphasize the whole Batman part because you do get to see him make a little Bruce Wayne speech at the beginning of City, but then you get captured and then you're fighting people while chained up, and you're pretty much just you're still Batman. And I kind of agree they didn't really focus on the man outside of the mask at all.
Some of it, I mean, honestly, just got to chalk up to an unattractive character design. Bruce Wayne's fugly in these Arkham games. He is.
The thing is, I kind of agree, but I feel like it's part of the Unreal thing. Like I feel like Unreal Engine games just have characters that look like this, like they came out of Gears of War. But I will say that I feel like in this game in particular, I saw a little bit of Kevin Conroy in that Batman's face, which could also add to the fugliness if you've seen Kevin Conroy. But no diss to him. He's an awesome dude. But
there's a reason he's a voice actor. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
As I've said before, I have a face made for radio and a voice made for print, so I can't speak to that. But can I just go, because I've got two rants about this game that I have to talk about, and one of them right now, because I think it's a good point, the identity. And I'm not talking about him getting revealed at the end. That was amazing. That was like golf clap, guys. Like I've never actually seen him do that in the comics. Like that was bold. I'm talking about the casual way that
Master Bruce,
anybody could know who he is during the course of this night.
Yeah.
Because he's using a screen that's like as big as my laptop that people are seeing over his shoulder.
No, they can't see it over his shoulder. He's got crazy eyes. He has crazy eyes when he's looking at it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was. I was thinking it's like cowl.
I did notice that, but they don't explain that in the context of the game, and the visual representation that we have is him holding up his gauntlet and an image materializing from the gauntlet, which leads me to say that, anybody can look at that, including the GCPD when he's talking to Oracle, calling her Oracle, and it's like, hey guys, police know Commissioner's daughter. Like, they're gonna figure this out. Because if it is like a augmented reality thing, then he shouldn't have to it should just appear in front of him. You know what I mean? Like he shouldn't have to have he should be able to do it hands free, and it should be like a virtual HUD or something like that.
Like I always imagine it like maybe like a light comes out of the gauntlet and then it kind of meets with something emitting from the cowl, which allows it to kind of appear that way.
Maybe, but I was totally fine with him just like holding his finger up to his ear for the cowl. But then also, friggin' Alfred calling him Master Bruce when I've got somebody in the Batmobile. Like, that. And then also, there were at least 2 times when, Barbara calls him Bruce when she's around other people. It's really careless, and it's one of those pet peeves of mine as a Batman fan where, in the comics, he is like, when I have this costume on, I am Batman, you are Robin, you are Nightwing. There are no, real names used, including Alfred. He doesn't call him Alfred. In the recent comics, he calls him Penny One. Or he just, doesn't call him anything at all. But and, I'm also coming off of The Flash, which is, a fantastic superhero show, but it's, the worst kept secret in the world is who Barry Allen is. Because everybody knows in that show. And it's come on, guys. Secret identities are secret for a reason. It's really
they've been having issues with that in comic book stuff in general. Like if you look at a lot of the movies, like I would say the worst offenders are the Amazing Spider-Man movies. It's like he didn't give a crap about his identity at all. He would kind of just swing into a place and, you know, pull off his mask and
keep your mask on.
Yeah, just like chill. But yeah, I guess, you know, in a way they might have been, but I always assumed that it was more intimate than it seems, just because like you are Batman, so you are getting all of that extra information, but that the outsider might not have that intercom or might not have that projection or the ability to see that. But that being said, you know, that's just a lot of stuff I assumed rather than, you know, it's not necessarily direct, so it is easy to interpret that as people being careless, but
especially since everybody seems able to hack into Batman's comm channel that night.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on. Like, really, like, I don't know. It felt sloppy in a way that I just, you know, had a really difficult time with, and probably most people won't. And I understand, like, from a storytelling perspective, for people who aren't fans of the comics, like, they might not know who Alfred is, they might not know who Barbara Gordon is, so they need a visual representation and the name to go with it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, I just felt like it could have been done a little bit better. I mean, straight up, like, one point is, like, when Barbara's at the GCPD during the onslaught, and she's talking to him. There's police there, you know, like, Cash is, like, you know, there next to her when she calls him Bruce, and it's like...
Well, didn't he know at that point?
No, that's before the big reveal, so...
Oh, so, yeah, maybe...
Where's the Batcave in these games?
In Origins is the only game that lets you go to the Batcave. And in
how did they resist putting... How can you build this big open world game and actually have the Batmobile and have this game look gorgeous and never, ever, ever give me the Batcave?
Or stately Wayne Manor. I was thinking about that the other day.
Yeah,
I was like, the city... Okay, this game looks incredible. Like, when you get up to the top of, like, Wayne Tower and you just look... Like, it is the most incredible draw distance I've ever seen. Like, you can see, like, police sirens moving through the city, like, across the city. It's amazing. But it also does not feel like a city. Like, it doesn't feel like a place where people live. Like, I for the life of me, I can't think of, like, homes. And like, I was thinking after I beat the game, I was like, why don't you ever go to Wayne Manor? Like, why is that not in this game? Like, it seems like a no-brainer. And the Batcave, for sure.
Well, yeah, like I don't know why, because like they set it up in Origins like they might have put the Batcave in there, because in Origins you see an early Batcave, so I assume that they might do a official one here. But in Origins they also let you use the Batwing to kind of fast travel from one area to the other, and that's why they let you go to the Batcave, because it's pretty much just another fast travel location. And I guess since they wanted to keep it in here, they're like, you know, let's not worry about that. But yeah, I do feel like it was a missed opportunity, because it would have been cool to see like the fully fleshed out Batcave, the real one, because Asylum, you got one, but Asylum's Batcave was like the extra Batcave he had over at Arkham Asylum, you know, not the real deal. So
yeah, I also want to go to the Batcave and then take the elevator up to the manor and get into my regular clothes and go talk to Alfred. You know, like, I realize that it takes place in one night, but again, that's part of them being hamstrung by that storytelling part. But also because, like, you know, it's hard, like, the only time I've ever seen Gotham actually mapped out was during No Man's Land in the comics, and that was, like, almost 20 years ago at this point. So, you know, to my knowledge, there hasn't ever been, like, a really definitive Gotham City, like, laid out, and this was the perfect example to say, or time to say, here is Gotham, this is what it is. Because honestly, and it's kind of weird, right, because I dinged Arkham Origins for the fact that it had a lot of the same locations as City, because it was basically the same map, just with, like, some things, like, rejiggered. But then in Night, I was like, where are the places in City? Because it's the same city, like, it shouldn't look different. Like, it's that same problem I have with GTA 4, when compared to GTA 3. It's like, this is the same city, and it's only a few years later, and it looks completely different. Like, places don't change like this.
No, I was thinking
Austin does.
Oh, okay, yeah, Austin does.
No, but I was totally thinking the same thing as you, because, like, I was going around, and I was like, I wonder if I could find, you know, Crime Alley again, because, you know, that was one of the cool things in City, where you could go find Crime Alley, but here it's like that wasn't there at all. So either it was like just completely like removed, or like it was a different section. But it's like I thought that Arkham City was within Gotham City. So like it's kind of I don't really have a good idea of how the city's constructed in comparison to the last one, but I guess they just felt like they were, they had their own plan, and they did have to redesign it a lot to accommodate for Batmobile, so they probably just said screw it, like they probably just stopped thinking about it at some point. But it is kind of a missed opportunity because I would have liked to revisit some of those areas too.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to ask you guys about this, your opinion, because as I was playing the game, I really felt, especially when like doing the post game stuff, that I would like the game to be 30% smaller. And I don't mean in terms of real estate. Like I think the actual city is great. I love exploring in it through the grappling hook. I don't like exploring it in the Batmobile, and we'll get to that. But I feel that a lot of the side quests were about 30% too long because you're doing the same stuff all the time. So it's like, like I loved the Professor Pig side missions just because it felt like the only time that I was really doing detective work. But you're also doing the same detective work on every single body, and it's like I either wanted them to mix it up where I have to like really like do some different things here, or cut them by a third. Same thing with like the Firefly thing where it's like, all right, I get that he gets away from Batman once. He didn't get away from Batman a second time. You know what I mean? Like Batman's ready the second time. And that was a problem for me, especially because like, and again going back to the pacing thing, like I really enjoyed the way that I would find missions when I was outside. Like I wasn't actually looking for a mission, but like for example, one of my favorite things was like finding the Man-Bat, because like for the first time that I saw him, like it freaked me the hell out.
Yeah,
that's
I got
really
scared.
That's a really good intro to a mission. But after that, like I never like tried to track him. It was like I would hear him and I'd be like, oh crap, where is he? And I'd be looking around. I'd like turn detective vision. I'm like looking for him, scanning the skies, and I find him, and then I chase him down, and that's cool. But I didn't want to have to do that 3 times. Like I don't know. I like. Did you guys run into that same thing, or are you fine with like the content of the game as far as like the repetition?
No, I agree because I saved a lot of the city checkpoint stuff, and the like pretty much anything related to the Deathstroke missions I saved generally for the end, and I felt like they dragged on a bit longer than I would have liked. Like so some of the shorter ones, like the Professor Pig stuff and the Firefly stuff, I felt like those were about as long as they needed to be. I do kind of feel like it was kind of BS that Firefly got away from him a second time, and then you have to get him the third. Like I guess they of course they like to do things in threes in video games, but it's just like that one felt like, okay, let's get Firefly out of here so we can get to everything else that's important. But yeah, some of those missions, I know it was the checkpoints and like those buildings that have like the security systems and stuff like that. I forgot exactly what it was, but
the towers,
the towers. Like I felt like there was a little bit too many of those. Just I feel like they could have, like you said, take away like a chunk of those, and that it would have been more of a sweet spot.
John, like, did you feel similar, or you good with that?
I think I might have felt that way if I was doing them back to back to back, but the game doesn't really let you do that unless except for some of the missions, if you happen to stumble across it again. Typically, the game will kind of delay you, so you can't do like one single thing in a row, one after the other. I mean, there's certain things you can, but like, the fireman stuff is like stuff I'm still cleaning up now. Mm-hmm. There's probably too many of those because I think I've saved like 18 and there's probably like 36 left to find in the city. But that's the only one that I've felt like is overly long. I mean, the stuff I'm messing with now, it's like I know that I'm going to be immersed in that. Like the Riddler stuff, I did kind of a similar thing to Julian where I kind of just saved it all. And So I'm dealing with that. I'm fine. I was fine with it when I was playing the game because I felt like it really created scenarios where I couldn't just keep doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, it's not so much that I was doing them over like one after another. It's more of like, oh well, it's a Two-Face thing, so I'm gonna do this exact same thing that I've done 3 times already, and there's not really a lot of like playing with the formula. To the point that like the penguin ones are like an excellent example where it's like find the van, track the van, find a way into the place, then beat up the dudes, and then blow up the stash. And it's like, let's play with that, like maybe let's do one where you control Nightwing for the whole thing, or let's, like maybe you do the legwork for it, or let's do one where the detonation didn't work and I have to find another way to do it, or I don't know, like I think there were ways that they could play with the formula a little bit. As much as I hate that Bane is in all the other games, like it actually would have been a little bit cool if like he was like guarding one of those stashes, just like freaking
Bane's
Bane
here, yeah.
with like Nightwing. That would have been kind of cool, even though again they played him out over the last 3 games. But
yeah, but I mean that would be a way for them to not have to worry about reusing assets. I mean, well, it would be a way for them to reuse an asset without it feeling completely stupid. Like it would have felt like it would have fit. Like, to be honest, like you mentioning that would be like I would be okay with that. And I do agree because it's like each quest line, even though all the quest lines are different, they do feel samey like within that quest line. But like you said, John, like I definitely played the game in a way that it spaced them out to where I didn't feel it. But like if you are just saying okay, I'm gonna do this, and that, like I said with the Deathstroke stuff, I saved a lot of that for the end, like the post game. And doing it all in a row did feel a little bit like, okay, like I understand I have to do this. And even though with those, it's a little bit of a different case because each setup or each area is set up a different way and you do have to tackle it a different way. You're still essentially doing the same thing. It's just you might have different enemy compositions or different, stealth areas or something like that. But, a little bit of variety could have benefited them, I would definitely say.
Yeah, and actually, and this is kind of a tangent thing, but actually thinking of side quests and missions and stuff like that, like I was really impressed with the finality of some of the stuff in this game. Like, well, at first, I definitely thought that Barbara was killed, so that was a big deal. Which I'm not really happy with the execution, just because like there was never that scene between Batman and Gordon where he tells him, like I think that's not a very Batman thing to do. Oh, you're looking at me weird. Did I just miss it?
No, but wait. Did you say there's never a scene where Batman tells Gordon?
Yeah, about Barbara being killed.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, like there was a pretty big blow. Like he got pretty mad at him.
No, like that's when she's captured.
Oh, that's when she's captured. Yeah.
Yeah, but not when she's killed. Like he tells Cash not to tell him, and it's like, what? That's. If anything, Batman should be the one to tell him.
I swore that he found out though, because like there was that whole scene where they're on the he kind of knew, but at the same time wasn't he kind of behind the whole thing anyway? Like he was kind of behind the whole deception.
That's true,
because he didn't know that she was alive. So
yeah that's a good point. Yeah, I guess that was a little thing, but anyway, like the whole like revealing Bruce Wayne's identity. Killing the Joker in the previous game, killing Poison Ivy in this one. I mean, I'm impressed with how Rocksteady was given carte blanche to kind of like take the Batman universe and just make it their own and run with it. Because I would feel, and I mean I could be wrong. John, you might know more about this than I do, but I feel like DC and Warner Brothers has a pretty tight rein on those properties to the point that they don't want people messing with their characters to that extent. Am I wrong on that? Like,
I think on the video game stuff, they don't care, weirdly enough. Yeah. For instance, one of the things that really like bothered me about the Injustice tie-in comic was the stuff where Superman punches pregnant Lois Lane in the stomach, killing their unborn baby and sending her into space, which I thought was really like...
Well, he thought she was Doomsday, though.
But there's certain things I just like. I don't think you do with certain characters that are iconic. Like I don't think you don't make a porno with like Bugs Bunny. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you don't have Superman punch his pregnant wife in the gut and kill her and the baby and send her flying into space. But and I kind of held the writer of that comic responsible, but then found out in interviews that was something he was specifically asked to do, like by the game manufacturers, whether WB Interactive or whoever it was that made
NetherRealm,
Mortal
Kombat.
But that was something that they asked him to make sure that was in the prequel to Injustice. So yeah, I think for the games they have a lot of freedom to kind of get in the toy box and play with the stuff as they see fit. I don't think there's a lot of they don't have much to answer to, and there's not necessarily a lot of oversight in regards to who can and can't die or what can and can't be done with characters. I mean, there may be, but it may be just a quick approval process where someone kind of looks and goes, okay, yeah, and goes back to what they're doing. I think they really encourage the games to find new ways to use the DC characters, and it's kind of funny because like I think the DC games are starting to influence the DC movies in a bigger way than the comic books are. I think Suicide Squad looks completely in line with games like Injustice and Rocksteady's games.
And
I think
Assault on Arkham, which is in the Arkham universe, it seems like it's ripped right from there in a lot of ways.
The animated movie, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think DC probably is in a place right now where they're I would imagine they're pretty encouraging because it's having an effect on their other forms of media that the comic books are not necessarily having.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then I wonder also, and I was thinking about this. I thought about this a little bit in City, but I kind of really wanted like a cameo from someone else in the DC universe, because like Arkham Asylum felt weird, and as much as I love that game, it felt weird in the Batman universe in the sense that I was like, I literally asked this question multiple times. I was like, is there a Robin? Like, does Robin exist? Because there's no mention of him, and it took me a long time to even get like his little file card in like the menus of
the dossier.
The dossier, yeah. Like it took a while to finally get him. It's like, oh, thank goodness, like there's a Robin. And so Knight addresses that really well because they do bring in more of the Batman family in there, which I thought that was great. But like part of me was like, man, it'd be really cool if Superman flew in right now.
Yeah, like I was waiting for like him to float down and just be like, "You okay, Bruce? You know, if you need help, blah, blah, blah." Be like, "I don't need you help, Clark." You know, like I would have been perfectly fine with something like that. Like kind of the way that Nightwing has a cameo in Arkham City. I thought that they would have done a Superman cameo in this game, or maybe even Green Arrow since he's so popular now.
Yeah.
But all they did was the mentions, which is still fine. Like there was a lot of Easter eggs in this game, but like I don't know if you came across any of them, but there's definitely a handful.
My favorite of all the ones, I mean, there's some real obvious ones like the Queen Building, but my favorite one that I found in an alley was Zatanna's Magic Shop.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
yeah, that was my favorite one that I was like, oh, look what it is.
Yeah,
I saw the Queen Building, and of course I saw like the LexCorp signs, and I think people talking about him running for president, which coincides with like a comic storyline back in the day. But yeah, because one of my favorite okay, so right off the bat, well, not right off the bat, but one of my all-time favorite Batman stories is No Man's Land, which is a story where Gotham there's a huge quake and they're declared a disaster area. The government gets out, and Gotham is left on its own. And I might say that like if you're going to do the whole, we have to evacuate all the people again because we don't want real people in this city. We don't want it to feel like an actual living, breathing place. Like that's a better way to do it than what they've done in the last 3 games. But anyway, there's a moment where, because you're thinking through this whole comic that like, why doesn't the Justice League help? Like, where's Superman? Like, they could fix this so quickly. And Superman shows up, and he's in disguise as a bum. And Batman is like, I know it's you, Clark. It's like, there's no way, like you smell like you just had a shower, like you look too clean, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, just leave. You're not going to do any good here, just leave. And it's this really good, like, thing. And there's a part where Superman tries to help, and he doesn't do any good. He's like, "You're right, I have to go." And it's like that's all I want. Like just that little conversation. Just make it. Just let me know that there's more to this universe than just Gotham City.
Yeah, but I mean, other than the Easter eggs that you saw, there is, I don't know, did you see the voicemail or hear the voicemail? Because in the Wayne Tower, there's a phone and there's a messages on the phone, and one of them's from like Lex. Vicky Vale, and then you get to Lex, so that's one of them, and then. Also, I don't know if this is only post-game, but like I heard, some of my friends heard these conversations during the main game, and I only heard them post-game, but you'll hear the thugs talking about, oh, where's that caped guy, the Superman or whatever. And like I've heard them mention Superman, Green Arrow, and the Flash. I heard all of them mentioned by the thugs. So I was like, oh, stop teasing me, because like either you're going to make a game on one of these series, or you're going to do a Justice League game, or you're not. And so, like, part of me wants to believe that their character switching tech is, like, testing themselves for a Justice League game, because, like, that's just how they like to make games and stuff, but, I don't know.
Isn't that what's rumored? That's what's rumored, right?
I think so. I think that if they're not doing Justice League, I think they're going to do World's Finest.
Though there was a moment in the game that, for me being like an old school DC fan, there was a moment in the game that I thought you were going to get to see an additional character from outside the Bat family, because he's in the game, but his alter ego is in the game, and that's Jack Ryder, because Jack Ryder is the DC character, the Creeper. And when I came across Ryder, I was like, oh, is the Creeper going to be in this game? It was just like kind of, because narratively I was like, that'll also fit in with the themes and make sense, because Batman is living with Joker in his head and trying to deal with that. And that's the Creeper's whole thing, is he's basically like a good guy version of the Joker. He's like constantly laughing. He's kind of like insane when he gives himself over to this thing. So I thought thematically they were going to introduce the Creeper in the storyline. Nope, they didn't. It was just Jack Ryder. It's kind of a letdown.
They do mention his alter ego in his dossier in Arkham City. Because that's the only way that I knew that he was somebody besides this reporter. Yeah, because I'd never heard of him before that game. But yeah, and like they do some pretty good deep cuts of Batman stuff. Like I was surprised at Professor Pig. I was disappointed in Professor Pig just because I hate everything that Grant Morrison does, and I think that like that character in his hands was awful. But I was surprised to have him in there, because I thought for sure it was going to be the doll maker from the New 52 stuff. But, and then Deacon Blackfire, I was like, holy crap, like...
Yeah, I was surprised they got
crazy.
Him. I felt like, just generally, the Rogues Gallery felt very diverse in this game in comparison. Like, I felt City went a little bit more into, let's get the heavy hitters. Like, your Mr. Freezes and your Mad Hatters. And, well, he's not really a heavy hitter, but he's a little bit more recognizable than some of the people they picked in this game. Yeah. But I felt like they did a good balance of people you know and people you probably don't know.
Yeah, I still am disappointed that they didn't go for some of the like D-listers. Like I think that the ventriloquist would actually work really well in this game series, and they've alluded to him before, but I think that would have been cool. Maybe Ratcatcher, even though he's like a
throwing
really weird
shade at you on Nerds Without Pants about the ventriloquist. The ventriloquist is a great modern Batman villain.
No, I think he is too. I'm just saying.
Wasn't he in? He made appearances in the animated series or Justice League. Yeah. Right? Like he's like that guy who kind of looks like a dummy, right?
Well, yeah, there's a ventriloquist, and then Scarface is the dummy who's in charge. But no, John, I mean, like I think he's a great villain. I'm just saying that like as far as like Batman's Rogues Gallery goes, like he's
no,
not...
it was your co-hosts. Your co-hosts are throwing shade. But your co-hosts also, and I can't remember whether it was Patrick or Angelo, I think it was more Patrick, that was saying that, like, you kept mentioning everyone, and he would say that they were like a pedophile. And I was like, I've played, I've played some of these games, and I don't ever remember any pedophilia in these T-rated Batman games, but...
Well, yeah, and I did mention that I think that he was filling in the blanks, which they probably intend you to do, but yeah, like that was not something explicitly.
Well, I don't think I ever played the Mad Hatter stuff. So
wasn't that Angelo?
That was
Angelo.
Angelo that was uncomfortable with it. I don't know.
Yeah, somebody said something about Yeah. Because I was thinking the same thing.
Angelo will go there when it's not there.
I have this habit now. This is like my thing. It's my gimmick of listening to the show, hearing them talk shit about D-list DC characters, and me coming back on the show and going, hey, I had to do it with Aquaman when they were talking shit about Aquaman. I had to come back and go, no, Aquaman's really good. And now I'm standing up for the Batman rogues.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, I think this is a good point as we're getting towards the end of this episode, John, to stand up for the Batmobile. And let me just say that I feel like the only sane person left in the world, but by that definition, I am the crazy one, because everybody that I've complained to about the Batmobile has told me, no, that's the best part of the game. That's my favorite part of the game. It's the coolest part of the game. And I have yet to see somebody criticizing the Batmobile, like, definitely not to the level that I do, but you guys I know are both on the Batmobile team, so tell me why, and then I will tell you why you're wrong.
I can drive it well. I'm good at drifting. It's a very drift. It's a weird. The weight of the vehicle is really strange, but it lends itself to e-brake drifting around corners really well. So I'm just flat out good at driving it. The other thing that I actually hate the stealth missions in it. I think the concept of stealth missions in a tank are really misguided. That probably my least favorite battle in the whole game is the one where you have to take out all the Cobra tanks by sneaking up behind them and hitting their points, and then you have the ones with the 4 points that you have to take out. By far my least favorite part of the game. That like stealthy tank stuff was bullcrap. But the other stuff, I like driving it around. You get to see a lot that you're missing by staying up on the rooftops all the time. The other thing is that the things that require the Batmobile specifically, I feel like are really well designed. The one thing that I'd heard complaints from people that their least favorite battle was the drill battle, but I thought the drill battle was actually pretty well designed and beat it. I think the only time I died was when I actually turned around and he was like right there and I just crashed into his things. But other than that, when I had him on the run, I beat it. I just did a Riddler thing where you have to lower yourself down this pit and rotate these sections to get all the way down to the bottom. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was clever. So I've actually enjoyed the things that are designed sorry, to use it in unique puzzle solving ways. It's kind of weird. But yeah, I just like it. I don't know.
Yeah, like I agree to an extent, because like I feel like a lot of the game was designed around the Batmobile, and I feel like they went about 25% too far down that. I feel like they force you to use a lot of the Batmobile at the beginning, and I feel like they integrate the Batmobile in a very interesting way, and I feel like they hit it about 85% of the time. I feel like there's a good chunk where I consciously felt like they were forcing it down my throat, or I don't really need to be using the Batmobile right now, or maybe I just didn't feel like using it at that specific point. But I do generally feel like I enjoyed it just because they were being creative. Like when they were trying to use the Batmobile almost as if it was a partner to Batman, and like he was saying, like those missions where you kind of have to use the Batmobile to solve some of the Riddler puzzles or to make it through like a certain area in the game. I felt like it was very interesting. I feel like the one that I had an issue with was at the beginning. Like that was the worst offender. Like the one where you have to break into, I think it was like a prison or something like that. And
Ace Chemicals.
Ace Chemicals. And I felt like that was the worst of those, just because I felt like it felt the most forced. But I felt like the way it was integrated into the latter missions was a lot smoother. When it came to driving the Batmobile in the city, I actually liked it a lot too. And I play a lot of GTA unfortunately. Some people might know why, but it's just like that in that game, driving is very realistic, and in this game it felt a lot more arcadey, and it felt just like you can go fast and you can bump into stuff, but it doesn't matter because you're in the Batmobile. And even though there's a little bit of that syndrome where it's breaking some of his character because he's just being reckless and destroying a whole bunch of stuff. And the logic is, well, when you play this game again, when you load your save, it's all going to be back there, and you might destroy it, but it's not really destroyed. But it's like logically, you're like, so at the end of this night, Batman probably destroyed just as much of the city as some of these villains have, because the Batmobile is just like tearing through everything. So you just kind of have to put that out of your mind a little bit. But it is a little bit distracting if you think about it.
It was actually distracting for me through the whole game because there's a lot of problems that I have with it, but part of it is from just a lore perspective and I had this problem actually going all the way back to the 1989 Batman movie after I started reading the comics, because I was like, Batman hates guns. Why does he have machine guns on his car and his plane? And here it's he's straight up shooting rocket launchers at dudes on foot. And then they say later on, it's like, that thing fires rounds that are non-lethal. And it's like, come on. No, those look pretty darn lethal. And also, let's not talk about the part where I'm just actively mowing people down, left and right. It's not a Batman-y thing to do.
Yeah, my friend was playing through the game, and I was kind of just bringing that up as a shoot comment, because it's the excuse is that there's some kind of electric pulse emitting from it that just stuns them after you mow them down. But no, there's no BSing it. You're running these people over, and it's silly, and it's very video gamey, and it's one of those things that they kind of just expect you to just be like, don't think about it too much, because we know it's dumb. But at the same time, I feel like they focused a little bit too much on this war aspect, because going into Arkham Knight, they were building up this whole thing about, Batman's at war with the Arkham Knight and with all these villains in Arkham City, and they tried to play it out, with the fact that there's all these tanks that the Arkham Knight has, and I just felt like that didn't really make a lot of sense, because like you said, when you think about what Batman uses the Batmobile for, it's mainly for getting around, and it does have some utilities. They made that clear in Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, where the Batmobile would bring them certain gadgets or have the ability to do certain things, and I feel like they could have left out a good portion of that combat stuff. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I actually thought that the combat stuff was kind of fun, just because it was kind of twitchy and it wasn't very hard to control, and it was it kind of got my blood pumping a little bit. So I enjoyed playing those sequences, but I just feel like for the character and for the story it was trying to tell, it didn't necessarily need to be there. It was, just having the Batmobile there for driving was good enough. And yeah. I didn't need it there to also have battles, and that battle at the end, when you're coming out of GCPD and you have to fight a shit ton of tanks and stuff like that. It was pretty difficult. And I was playing the game on hard, so I was getting mauled at times, and I had to really sit there and think about my strategy. And it was satisfying, but it was also a little bit much. But that it was only that point and at the beginning of the game where I felt like they were shoving it too much down my throat, because otherwise I felt like there was a good enough balance between out of Batmobile and in Batmobile stuff to kind of satisfy me personally. But I definitely can understand your complaints about it, because
oh no, because you haven't heard my complaints yet.
Just based on what I've read on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. But I'm curious to hear what you have to say, though.
Well, one point that you brought up, JD, is actually something that I was going to bring up later, but I'm thinking of it now, and I think part of my problem with the implementation of the Batmobile and some of the stuff in the games in general is the way that I approach Batman as a character. So, for context, my favorite James Bond movie is Casino Royale. because I think it's a really awesome stripped down James Bond where it focuses on James Bond as a character and is very tense, and he's kind of just relying on his wits during the poker game, but then also his fists for a lot of the altercations. Where that's how Bond started off, was like, you know, it was more about the character, and then at some point it devolved into, well, he's just got all these gadgets for every single situation, and it became almost a cartoon. I feel that way with Batman, where when I think about Batman as a character, I don't think of him as this dude with a ton of gadgets and a lot of cool tech. I think of him as this really driven person who has gadgets but doesn't need them most of the time because he's Batman. So, you know, I feel like just in general in these games, and I realize it's a video game thing, but like the reliance on all of his tech and gadgets is kind of weird. But also in the Batmobile, where it's like you said, JD, Batmobile's for getting from point A to point B fast. You know, that is what it's for. I think really it was Batman Begins that kind of started the whole, like, well, no, but I can, you know, go up buildings and I can, you know, jump over things with this and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But part of my problem with the Batmobile in Arkham Knight is not the Batmobile's fault. It's the fault of the last two Arkham games, because Batman can fly. Like, yeah, and that's my thing. And I've said this. I said this when City came out. Batman doesn't fly. Like, I think that it's cool that you have the grapple hook, and I think that it's cool that you can glide. I think that for me, what it would be better if his gliding was like the actual descent was increased by about 25%, so that you, and also that it didn't have the grapple boost, so that you couldn't actually like use it to basically get higher and higher and then soar across the city. Like, my feeling is that you shouldn't be gliding for more than about 4 seconds in that game. And I know a lot of people say, well, but you need to be able to like have like quick traversal in an open world game, but you know, they did it fine in Assassin's Creed, they did it fine in Infamous, where, you know, like in Infamous is a perfect example where he climbs a lot and then eventually he can glide, but he doesn't glide very far. That's really what I feel those games should have been, so that when you do have the Batmobile, it's like, well, no, this is better because I can get to places so much quicker now than I could before, where, you know, straight up, guys, like most of the time in Arkham Knight, I'm getting there as the crow flies so fast because I grapple boost so far, and then I'm just gliding, and then I grapple boost again, and I'm there. So the Batmobile isn't even really a thing for me a lot of the times.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they did that just to accommodate for, they probably knew that there weren't going to be people that liked it. Like, I feel like a lot of the delay came from, let's iron out these Batmobile mechanics, because if we release it as it is now, people are going to hate that. And to be fair, like, I felt, you know, I love the gliding in the Arkham games. Like, you know, even though I do kind of agree, like, it's a little bit much because you never see Batman pretty much flying in any other fiction aside from the Arkhamverse. But there were moments where I would, you know, choose a side quest, but that side quest would be on a completely different island. And I felt like it was a lot quicker to get there in the Batmobile than by gliding. And that being, you know, I didn't necessarily test it, but just gauging it, it felt like, okay, I'm just going to use the Batmobile. I'm going to drive to this area, and then I'll hop out whenever I feel like I'm close. And, you know, I guess it just came from my comfortability using it. But I still feel like a lot of the issues people have with the Batmobile isn't necessarily from the driving part. It's more of the battle part. I don't know, but maybe you disagree.
I can't drive the Batmobile. And it's funny, John, that you said the weight of that car, because part of my problem is that I feel the car has no weight. To the point that, like, there have been times when I've been driving this sucker where I'm just driving and I'm not touching anything, and then the back wheels spin out on me. Like, it just starts fishtailing on me, and I'm not actually turning. It just starts to, like go crazy on me. And the way the city is designed is there's so much crap in the roads that you're going through and stuff, and it feels like if the Batmobile nicks anything, like, it just spins out. And then also, anytime it gets any air, which is all the time, you know, anytime that it leaves, like, the wheels leave the ground, it's just a free-for-all as far as where I'm going to end up. And so I failed so many, like, chase missions because, like, the Batmobile ended up going the wrong way because I got a little bit of air and then got flipped around and then was going the wrong way, and then by the time I righted myself, because I can't drive that thing to save my life, it was over. This happened to me throughout the entire game. I never got a mastery over the Batmobile. Now, a lot of people are going to listen to this and say, well, you just suck at driving, Julian. But, and to be fair, I don't play racing games, but I do play open world games just fine. Like, I think the cars in the Saints Row games, perfect. Love them. I think they work perfectly well. I said this on, like, the proper show, but, like, I think that the way the cars handle in Twisted Metal Black, where they just, like, turn on a dime and, like, they're just really snappy, is the way that this should have gone. I'm playing Rocket League all the time now on PS4, and every time that I play it, I'm like, oh, this feels so good. And then I go back to Arkham Knight, and I'm like, I can't do any of this.
I don't think it's a dissimilar feel from Rocket League, honestly. I think they feel very similar. They both feel the cars feel weirdly hollow. And again, I do a lot of sliding, but yeah, I actually think the physics on the cars in those two games actually feel really similar.
I do a lot of sliding in the Batmobile also, but it's not because I want to.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I'm handbraking, but like I'm talking about, I'm trying to drive and I'm sliding, like just constantly sliding. So there's that, and that might be on me, but I feel that, like, as someone who doesn't play a lot of racing games but does play open world games, that I shouldn't have that problem, because I haven't had that problem in most other open world games, with the exception of GTA 4 and 5, which, like you said, JD, went for a super simmy style of, like, very realistic with their driving physics, to the point where, it was almost like a detriment. I mean, I got used to them eventually, but it took a lot of getting used to.
Yeah.
So then there's the tank stuff, and, obviously, I mean, you guys already said it, like, the stealth stuff is terrible. That battle with the cloudburst was where I was like, I'm not going to be able to beat this game, because I literally cannot do this. Like, I kept trying and I couldn't. Well, it wasn't just that. There was other missions too. Like, basically, anytime that there's an arena where you're just, like, getting assaulted by tanks and drones, it just feels lazy to me. Like, but also because you do it so many times in the course of the game, where it's like, like, here's a side mission where you have to do this, and for me, it's just like, again, like, and this goes back to that whole, like, ability versus age thing. This was the first game that made me feel like my reflexes aren't up to snuff, because, like, when you have the targeting reticles from the tanks, it's like, I see that I have to dodge, I know I have to dodge, but then somehow that was just firing like about a microsecond too slow every single time, and I would get hit by every single missile, and, like, I was like, I don't know what's going on, and that's not a fault of the game, that's on me, but the fact that I had to do those things so many times, and it's like, So like you said, JD, the Ace Chemical thing, that's, like, probably the worst introduction to that car, but at least it's over. It's like the first couple hours of the game, and then it evens out pretty well after that, like, it's not really heavy on it, and then the climax of the game happens, where it's all freaking Batmobile, all freaking time, up until, like, you take down the Arkham Knight. And at that point, the game became such a slog for me, that was really where it cemented my hatred of the Batmobile, because it was like, first you have to, like, do this tracking thing, then you have to do this big melee with a bunch of tanks, and then you think you're done, but then there's a whole other second ring inside this building with a whole other battle, like, tank battle. And then there's the big cloudburst stealth thing that you have to do. And then after that is the excavator, which, no, that was another point where I thought I wasn't going to finish that game.
Yeah, I actually am with John on that one. Like, the thing is, just to make this clear, you're not the only one that hates that battle, because I've seen a lot of people, like, raging at that. But for me, when I played that battle, like, I died a couple of times, but I got through it pretty, without much stress. Like, it was just like, okay, like, I have to kind of lure them over to these areas and then go through and, make sure I survive, and then hopefully once I do, that's it. But yeah, like, that being said,
I probably died about 9 or 10 times on that battle. Not even kidding. And you know how I finished it, and it was completely by accident, and I still don't know how I did it. At some point, I ended up putting it in first person.
Oh, yeah, that's when you press down on the D-pad when you're driving, you do that. A lot of people said that helped for them, actually.
Okay, yeah. Like, when it did that, I was like, oh, like, I can do this now all of a sudden. And I hate playing driving games in first person. I never do it. I like seeing my car, but for some reason that worked, but I didn't know how I did it. If now that I know that, maybe I'll do some more, like, maybe I'll do the Riddler stuff that way, because again, like, knowing that a lot of the Riddler stuff has to do with, like, the Batmobile just makes me not want to do that stuff. But I want to see all the endgame stuff, so I'm torn.
The hardest Riddler thing was the stuff with the like U-turn bouncing off the wall and gliding, and you glide through the tunnel that's electrified to get to the other side. That stuff was the worst of the Riddler trials, I thought. I haven't hit a car Riddler trial that's bothered me. Well, I mean, this final one has been a pain in the butt, but the one that required the precise wall jumping and gliding to me was the absolute worst one.
The first Riddler one, like, I had to do like 8 or 9 times. Like, not even kidding. Like, I just couldn't do it. Because that car just does not want to respond to me, and I don't know. And again, it makes me feel like a crazy person, like, talking about it on this show, because everybody that I've talked to has been like, no, it's the best part of the game. But again, like, just from a design perspective, I just feel that a lot of it is just lazy. Like, it's so padded with those tank battles to the point that, you know, I have so many of those mines to disarm. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, guys. Like,
no, that's understandable, because, like, they do put a lot of those in there, and, you know, Rocksteady, I'm sure that there was a lot of contention about it, you know, because that just seemed like something that, you know, when it came out, there's so much of a divide, and there's a pretty big, you know, I guess, complaint about the Batmobile in general, and how much of it was really necessary. But they just decided to go all in, and when they decided to go all in, they really did. Like, they committed to it, and, you know, I guess they just were like, some people are gonna like it, some people won't, and screw the people who don't. You know, that's kind of weird, because, you know, they put a lot of emphasis on something that hasn't been a part of it at all. And people said they wanted the Batmobile, but they didn't want the tumbler, you know what I'm saying? Like, you wanted the Batmobile, and they gave you the tumbler, and, you know, to you know, that's it's kind of like a good and a bad, you know, like, it did vary up gameplay a little bit, you know, but, you know, generally, like I said, like, for me, I know I came away more, you know, on the positive side of that spectrum, but I also, as I was playing, I could see, like, yeah, like, if you don't like these driving mechanics, you'll probably really not like it at all.
Yeah, and I feel that, like, there was a meeting where, like, the director of the game was like, guys, we spent a lot of time and money making this Batmobile. We need to do stuff. So I want everybody to submit ideas for Batmobile stuff. Anything's going to make it in. And somebody's like, well, what if the Riddler, what if all of his challenges were races? It's in. Do it. Okay, cool. What if we did stealth, but in a car? I like it. Let's do it 15 times. You know, like, and then it was just like that'll add, you know, like 2 hours to the game right there. This is great. Like, they're not going to trade it in if we do this stuff. Like, that's really what it feels like to me, and I don't like that. Like, it you know, I know that it's insulting to say lazy design when it comes to game design, because it takes so much work. I understand that, but it really feels like, you know, they came up with a handful of ideas, and they're like, well, we're good. Let's just iterate, or, like, you know, let's do that, you know, 30 times, you know, in the course of this game.
Like, for a game that had so much attention to detail in other areas, it's kind of interesting to see how they approached that.
Yeah, and, you know, I love the design of the car. I think it's one of my favorite Batmobiles, even though I am not a fan of the single-person cockpit, like, you know, going all the way back to, like, the Tim Burton Batman. Like, I always feel that he should at least have room for a passenger. And they kind of, did that thing with the rear thing, but that just looks like you're storing people like
Yeah.
like slabs of meat.
He has room for 2 in the Tim Burton Batmobile.
Does he?
Yeah, it's a 2-seater. He drives Vicky Vale to the Batcave.
That's right. Where am I? Is it the animated series where he's got one?
The animated series is one, or it looks
at
like
least initially.
Yeah, and the I think the last Joel Schumacher one with the open cockpit, which is like the worst, is a 1-person job.
Yeah, and well, the Tumbler had 2, but it really felt like they like barely, there was any room for a second person. I don't know. It's more of a little nitpicky thing for me. But as we wrap up, like Arkham Knight is a phenomenal game. I was really happy with most of it. I still think the combat's fantastic. Even though there wasn't as much Predator stuff in this game as I would have liked, just in the sense that like they seem like to kind of just pop up randomly, which I guess is because you're mostly outdoors, so it's not like there are times when I'd be like, oh, I guess I should have done this stealth, but I just ended up like jumping on these guys and didn't realize it, so I just take them out with my fists and my feet. That stuff still feels really good when you really pull off like an excellent stealth part of the game. I think that like some of the new gadgets, like the voice recognition thing, was really cool.
Oh yeah.
All the stuff with the Joker, just really well done.
Can we talk a little bit? I don't know if you want to. You don't have to. But can we talk about the Nightfall Protocol endings? Or do you want to see them first and revisit it on NWP or something? Because like I'm just curious. Like I don't know if you've seen them. I forgot whether you said you've seen them or not. But
I have not.
It's like the Nightfall Protocol endings. Like there's certain games that have a lasting effect on me. Like one of the last times this happened with me was like with BioShock Infinite, where you finish the game and you're just kind of like, you're thinking about it and you're researching about it and you're looking at other people's opinions and trying to form your own. And that's kind of how I felt after seeing the 100% Nightfall ending. The regular Nightfall ending still is a little like leave some stuff up to interpretation, but interesting stuff there, and I'm very curious to see what you think about it once you do that.
I'd rather leave that, because I know John and I are kind of trying to get towards that, but I do have one question, and you can be vague about this, but do you end up controlling a different Batman for a little bit?
No.
Okay. See, I thought that's where it was going. I thought for sure that like once I apprehend these next 3 like villains, that I'm either going to be Azrael Batman or Dick Grayson Batman, and I thought that would have been really cool. Yeah,
that would be interesting. Wrap up the Azrael side. Have you wrapped that up?
I've done Azrael.
Which ending of Azrael's side? Because the reason why they can't do Azrael Batman is because there's 2 endings to that side quest.
Oh, really?
Yes, because
I know you have a choice, but I figured that like there was only one right choice and the other one is a game over choice.
No, there's 2 choices. So one of the choices is not trying to attack Batman, but what I did is because I thought that the same thing you did, and I attacked him just to see if I got a fail state, but it kept going. So he apprehends Azrael just like every other villain. So once that happened, people started, there's just some stuff that happened that made people think that Azrael might be involved in the ending, but I was like, that's impossible because my Azrael's in prison while yours might not be, mine's in prison. So,
right.
And, obviously that the theory has expanded from there, since then, but a lot of people initially thought that Azrael would have to do with it.
I didn't think you had any choice but to attack. I didn't know there was an option to do anything else. What's the other option? Sit there and not touch the controller?
No. There's a button prompt for breaking the sword.
Yeah.
Okay, I walked up to it and never saw the prompt.
Oh, yeah.
So the only prompt I got was to attack
to
Batman, so I did.
No, I was just saying, you have to take the sword, but it's like once you're holding it, like I forgot if you have to stand there for a while, but it's like I stood there for a while and I saw both prompts, but I was just like, I'm just gonna attack them and see what
Well,
happens.
whatever the other prompt was, I never saw because I just saw the attack one, so I thought it just had one. I would have liked to have known that. That's kind of weird. But there's been some different prompt things in that game where, like, I think one of my least favorite things is that the rooms that have the situational riddles, I feel like there should be, and maybe this is a little bit too like day job of me because I do UX in my day job, but I feel like the ones that are inaccessible should be like yellow, like basically you can't do it yet. I hate the fact that the situational riddles will show up when you walk into the room regardless of whether or not you can do them at that given time. Mm-hmm. So for instance, I'm completely confused. I know, like, looking online, I know that the one that they give when you're in the room with Catwoman can't happen. You can't actually solve that riddle until she's got the collar off. And the collar's like laying on the ground and you walk up and pick up the collar and that solves that riddle. So it's situational, but when you walk in the room, you get it. And it's like there's the one with Cash and his memento from Arkham, and he has a mug sitting beside him that's an Arkham mug. I don't know what is supposed to be taking place that lets me look at it or do whatever I need to do. I've gone into first person and detective mode and everything else, and it's like I've looked online, I know that's the answer, but for whatever reason there's some situation tied to it and I don't know what it is and I can't solve it. I wish that those riddles had some visual signifier that the time wasn't right, because you end up wasting a lot of time messing around with stuff that you can't do anyways because the timing is not there.
There's also an issue that I've noticed, and this is not just a problem with Arkham Knight, it's a problem that I've noticed with some games on, like, they've come out more recently, is the hotspots for things that you can interact with is really small. So you can easily, like, you'll see the prompt come up very quickly, and then it disappears, and it's like, you've got to be, like, dead on. But the way Batman moves, and I will say real quick, because one of my biggest pet peeves of these games has been finally taken care of, and that's the fact that Batman no longer walks around like he's got a stick up his ass, like his spine is made out of metal, like he finally moves like a human being.
I said that same thing to my friends. I was like, look at his run. I made a point. I was like, run as Batman and just be happy because he finally looks like he's running like an actual person, not like someone who's like, got something shoved up him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But yeah, like you've got to maneuver in such a way that like it's right there to press the X button, and a lot of times I would and sometimes trying to set up the like the fear multi takedowns, and it would be like I'd have like just a millisecond window of opportunity, and I'd have to like as far as like where the stick would be, because if I was just slightly off, like it wouldn't give it to me, and just weird little things like that. And that's kind of, I think, more of just, it might be an Unreal 4 thing, or it might just be like something to do with the PS4, because I've noticed it more recently with I think I noticed it on Shadow of Mordor as well, just little things like that where I couldn't actually interact with things when I should. I've heard similar things with The Witcher 3 where people are having problems like actually interacting with the world because of that. But did you guys have any closing thoughts? 'Cause I think we're pretty much done, but just closing thoughts as far as like, glad that you went through the game, obviously, but like, do you want another one, or are you good with it being like ending here?
If I can go first, I think talking about the Justice League game, I think the Batmobile stuff really lets me see how a co-op one-player Justice League game would work, because you do use it as a partner so often. And the stuff with Catwoman, for instance, and the Riddler stuff, you're switching back and forth to solve puzzles and even take care of enemies at some point. So I think we're starting to see, if the rumors are true, there's certainly some seeds of that in Arkham Knight that are kind of exciting. You can imagine situations where you're switching off with Cyborg, say, to like hack some computer to open some door to let you in someplace else, or you're switching to the Flash to deliver something within a time limit that you need to be able to do this other thing. There's all kinds of things that I can start to see in the game because of your interaction. If you start to think about your interaction with the Batmobile and your interaction with especially the Batmobile, but also to some degree Catwoman, you can see how you can really see how a Justice League game would be approached within kind of the same development framework that they've already built, and that starts to get me pretty excited.
Yeah, like based on the endings of the game, like it's really hard for me to fully understand how they would approach Justice League. Like gameplay wise, I definitely think that the tools are there, and I think that if they don't do Justice League, I definitely feel like either Green Arrow or Superman would be next, just because like Green Arrow is just very popular because of the show. That's just a fact. Even though the show's kind of the last season of the show was like but I think Superman game still needs to happen because Superman still hasn't been done right. And to me, it's for some reason, I'm not even sure why, but it's very important to me that they get him right because, DC has had a Batmanification, if you will, where it's like if it's not Batman, if it's not dark, if it's not gritty, then there's no place for it. People don't want it. And that's kind of what Arrow started off as a, pseudo Batman thing. And it wasn't until Flash came out that they're like, Flash brought that lighthearted style back to it. And then now they're changing Arrow to be a little bit more lighthearted to kind of accommodate for that. And Superman isn't even really that lighthearted. He's just very complex. And a lot of people feel like they can't relate. And I feel like a good game that does it, that pays homage to those, to all the good mediums where Superman took place. Like I feel like it could, tell a good story and do something visually spectacular, especially.
Imagine a Superman game where you're at the beginning of his career and your training in the game is the discovery of your powers and what your powers can do. And as the game escalates and increases, your Superman is increasingly more powerful and able to do things that you weren't able to do at the beginning of the game because he's learning what he can do within the realm of his superhero mantle. I think that's a great way to approach a Superman game. But now we're like cloud talk on like games we'd like to see.
Yeah.
But I can totally picture like a game in which you start off and you've got, okay, I know I can kind of jump really far and I know I can see through walls and I'm strong. How strong am I? I don't know. And then the missions they give you are designed in such a way where they require you to figure new stuff out. And you're learning with Superman and you're figuring out his powers. And by the end of it, you're going to space, you're flying through buildings, like you have all of that power set. I think that's a great idea for a Superman game.
And I think it's incredible, like very possible, just because, when you look at the games that are possible now and, just think about where games are going, like the scale has increased so much. Like when you look at games like Dragon Age or like The Witcher or like even Arkham Knight, in a sense, like these games are big games. And they're a lot bigger than they have been before. And a game with that dealing with Superman, you kind of need that scale unless you have a reason to contain it, which is, the worst case scenario. But, when you have a Superman game, you do want to have those moments where you're saving a plane from crashing or you're going out into space because you need to get closer to the sun, to recharge your energy or, stopping a meteor from crashing into Earth or something. Like you want to be able to do those things because you're Superman. Those are the kinds of things that only he can do, and it would be a challenge. And that's why, like, I feel like Rocksteady might want to, but I don't know if they can. And that's why I feel like Justice League or a Justice League game is a little bit more feasible. Just because if you do Justice League, you have to contain it because you need something that all those heroes can do. Or at least some of them. Like they might not even incorporate all of them, but like John said, like Cyborg is someone that they can easily do. If they wanted to get into, if they wanted to incorporate some people like Green Arrow, they probably could. But if you wanted to stick to the core, like Flash, they could probably manage. Batman, if they find some way to, without spoiling, like if they find some way to kind of get him into this story in a way that makes sense, that would be cool.
I mean, they can always. I mean, I'm sure he's a member of the Justice League at
exactly,
like already, so they can do stuff before Arkham Knight,
or just cut it off. I mean, there's no reason why they can't just go, hey, this is our new Batman and our new Batman game.
Yeah, that's true too. And I would say, John, and actually, like you bring up a good point. And I feel that like with this generation so far, like people have been very underwhelmed with what the new systems have been doing. But if you're looking closely, they're doing a lot of things that I have shocked me, and that couldn't have been done before. And to your point, John, about like being able to switch between characters and stuff, like that's a little thing that is huge that they do in Arkham Knight, because
it's seamless.
It's seamless because like at the end of the first Riddler thing where I had to like switch over to Catwoman to like find the key, I was like, she's on the other side of the town, and I'm switching between them like nothing. And you know, the city, once you load into the game, I mean, it's all there, and like I said, you know, you can see it for miles, and that's something that you couldn't do before. So yeah, I could totally see a situation where it's like, as the Flash, you know, you're running through this entire place, you know, in seconds, you know, while Superman is flying above, and you know, Batman is swinging, you know, from rooftop to rooftop, and then you all converge at the same spot. Like that's the thing that could not have been done in the previous generations, and I'm excited to see where they go, because like you said, JD, earlier, like it does feel like, you know, there's some groundwork being laid here by Rocksteady where they're testing things out and trying like new things, and some of the stuff that they lay in, it's like it seems effortlessly done, but I know enough about how games are made to know that, oh no, that was some work, and that took a lot of time, and it was probably broken for a long ass time, and they got it working, and you know, kudos to them. I mean, it's an excellent achievement.
I mean, but to be fair, this could also just be a setup for that rumored Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, which, to be honest, I would be very curious to see how they would do that. And I say that only partially joking, because it's like, I kind of would like to see what they would do with that, but at the same time, I don't really want to see that. But I'm also like, if they said that, yeah, they are doing Turtles, I'd be like, okay, like, let me see a trailer first. But at the same time, I'd much rather them do something else, you know.
Is that rumor simply because their name is Rocksteady? Is that how that came about?
I thought that it started like a little bit after City came out, and people were saying that Rocksteady's next game, or what Rocksteady was working on, either it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something else, but I think Turtles was the rumor for a long time, and then they came out and just said, no, we're not doing that. But you know, part of me still feels like, you know, that seems like a Rocksteady kind of thing, like aside from the name, even just like, you know, for some reason it's easy for me to imagine the Turtles in the Unreal Engine with that fighting system. And
yeah, man, like gritty Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, Ninja Turtles with, you know, that Batman combat.
Yeah, and it's
like more grounded.
And,
yeah, I
and
can
the
see
Turtles are
being
bigger
like
now than
Mordor.
they ever were. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see Turtles being a little bit more like the Mordor game, which would be sort of like a modern update of the arcade, because it's essentially a beat 'em up, and I could see it as like Foot Clan generals and stuff. Yeah, I picture that in my head.
Doing some stealth, but then also like being able to like get down when you have a bunch of Foot Clan soldiers around.
Mm-hmm. And then they have the tag team attacks now, so it's like perfect. Like, I'm just saying, like I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them do that, even though I'd rather them stay in DC. But you know, like I don't know if Rocksteady is like feeling the license fatigue, and maybe they want to do a new IP. Who knows? But you know, they have such a stamp now that they kind of can't really get out of it.
Well, I would not be opposed to you fine listeners leaving us lots of warm comments about this episode and your thoughts about Arkham Knight, and you know, I'm sure that you'll call me out on, you know, how insane I am about my Batmobile hatred. Which, fine, you know, I think I owned up to a lot of it. That part, you know, I'm willing to admit that part of it is on me, but you know, I can't state enough how much I loved this game and look forward to seeing what Rocksteady does next. I don't want another Arkham game. Like, 4 was enough. 3 was enough, to be perfectly honest. So, you know, I hope to see not only Rocksteady do something new, but I hope that if they do another Batman game, if it's another studio, that it's not Arkham related. Like, it can be in the same universe, but just let's drop that name, because it was labored with Arkham City, and it's silly after that point. But, thank you guys for coming on for this impromptu spoiler cast. It's fun to get to do these, and I'd like to do more of them, but it's just like it's rare to find a game that has this much that we can talk about, that also enough of us play to where we can get a group together to do it. So, John, thank you for being on, and you know, definitely let the good people know where they can find you and what you'd like to plug right now?
I'm on Twitter at Gholson, Gholson. You can find me on ESN.FM's Giant Size show where I'm talking about comic books. So if you like the stuff I had to say about the Batman family, I talk like that about all kinds of comics on that show.
Indeed. And JD?
Yes, I am at a myth known as JD. Nothing interesting going on yet, but I do have a couple of things that I'm working on. Some series I plan on resurrecting on Pixelbit, so we'll see.
And also look forward to the next part of the Dead Space 2 Backloggers Anonymous.
Yes, that
podcast.
is coming up soon. Yes.
And you can find me at Julian_Titus. Hopefully you enjoyed this spoiler cast. And and if you're new to Nerds Without Pants, go give it a listen maybe. I'd appreciate that. And give us some feedback. We always appreciate that. Thank you for listening. And for myself, JD, and John, keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Any ideas? Just one. Hit it. Good evening, all you gentlemen, mobsters, creeps, and crooks. Men in tights come after you, and still you're off the hook. For those who scare and terrorize, it's the dawn of a brand new day. You scum can simply call us the one and only Birds of Prey. Green Lantern has his special ring. Pretty strong, that little thing. Blue Beetle's deeds are really swell. But who will bring him out of his shell? Flash's foes, they finish last. Too bad sometimes he's just too fast. While all the boys can always save the day, no one does it better than the Birds of Prey. While all the boys can always save the day, no one does it better. No one does it better than the Birds of Prey. Green Arrow has heroic traits. That is when he's shooting straight. Hey, I'm just saying. Aquaman's always courageous. His little fish less outrageous. Plastic Man can expand, becomes funny in our hands. While all the boys can keep you punks at bay, no one does it better than the Birds of Prey. While all the boys can always save the day, no one does it better. No one does it better than the Birds of Prey. Hey! Batman throws his batarang. What a weapon, what a bang. Check out that utility belt. Sure can make a girl's heart melt. He's always right there for the save. I'd like to see his secret cave. Well,